Hi, everyone. My name is Katie McGee, and I lead marketing and business development for Weaver. We are glad that you are here today for our webinar on how the pandemic could change leadership, culture, and work. We have a great group of you that will be joining us today and some excellent presenters, Lee Colan and Dale Jensen, who are excited to share their insights on this topic. We also, if you participated in some of the previous webinars we've done in this series, the last one in particular, we had really great engagement. We wanted you all to share with us your thoughts on our topic, and you did, and it was really insightful, and we also were able to answer any questions that you had. So we want to do that again today, questions on leadership and changes in culture and work in the current environment, and what your organizations are doing to help and to help your employees and your leaders. So feel free to type those things into the Q&A window anytime. We'll be watching for that. Would love for you to engage with us throughout the webinar. With that, I'd like to introduce our presenters, Lee Colan, who is an organizational psychologist and executive advisor. He has authored 15 leadership books, including 2 bestsellers, and he is also the co-founder of the L Group, which is a leadership consulting firm. He founded that in 1999. We've had a long-term, he's been a long-term friend of the firm at Weaver, and we're excited to continue partnering with him on this series. Dale Jensen is a partner at Weaver and the chair of the firm's culture committee. With that, thank you, Lee and Dale. I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Good to see you again, Dale. Thanks for joining me today.
Yep, third time the charm. So this is number 3, so it's been going well so far. So we can keep it going.
I feel like this is the last dance series of Michael Jordan, right? Kind of the last series. So anyway, listen, some of you joined us over the last couple of webinars. We appreciate that. If you've been hitting the trifecta here, that's great. We talked about building a positive mindset during uncertain times, and we also talked about building a positive culture with remote teams. Both of those are kind of current day, real world things that we're struggling with now. And today's topic is a little more forward looking, how the world might change as a result of this pandemic, as we think about leadership, culture, and work. So Dale and I are going to share some perspectives, I think mostly informed perspectives, but I'll qualify that we're looking into a crystal ball a little bit also. But I think we have a pretty good sense from our clients and Dale's clients at Weaver of what's going on. And I think we kind of see the trajectory, and I'm not sure it's changing that much, but we want to kind of talk about how the pandemic might address that. And the fact is, Dale, I don't know if you agree with this, but there have been changes in the world of work, kind of this trajectory over the past decade or so we've been seeing around culture and people and involvement and purpose and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that this pandemic has kind of just created a tipping point to kind of accelerate that curve is really what's happening. I'm not sure it's changing it. It's just like it's happening a lot faster. So just any thoughts on that yourself?
No, I agree. So, in leading the culture committee, one of the things that I've been very focused on for a while now is the concept of emotional intelligence. And I think that this trajectory on emotional intelligence is something that has, from a business perspective, continued to become top of mind for a lot of people in the business community and a lot of leaders. And so I agree. Like, when you enter into this post-pandemic environment, I think that even becomes even more highlighted and more important from an organizational perspective then too.
Right. So we're gonna jump get into emotional intelligence in a little bit, but let me talk about ask you about leadership first, if you don't mind, and let me just couch this a little bit too. And I always think of organizational changes and stuff, and I think of it like a hurricane. So in the outer winds of a hurricane, there's just all kinds of stuff swirling around, right? And really, but in the core of the hurricane, in the eye, it's stable, right? And things tend to be unchanged there. And I think when we think about organization and people and culture and leadership, the core concepts of how to lead people and how to build a great culture are really at the eye of the storm, right? They've always been there. But what what happens is sometimes people get caught up in multi-generations in the workforce and the millennials and new technologies and greater competition globally, all these other stuff. They get caught up in the outer wings. And the fact is, there are some simple truths about how to lead people, how to build culture, and how to design work so people are motivated that really haven't changed in a long time. Now, that doesn't mean we should dig our heels in and say we're not going to do anything. It means we do need to have an appreciation for the new context we have. So the big outer wind now in the hurricane is the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So understanding and appreciating that, but not getting away from the simple truths that we know about how human beings work and how culture is built. And so that's kind of my just perspective on that. So as we talk about these things today, we just want to make sure we're Dale and I are going to try to draw back into the simple truths too.
Yeah, something I was reading recently in one of the books, and a kind of simplification of a lot of things. It's like, regardless of what's going on around us, changing economic environments, like those whirlwinds that you talk about, regardless of if we're in a people business such as Weaver, in a product business that needs to be innovative, what are we trying to do? And so, and what I really took away from this one book is they kind of simplified it is the maximization of human potential. So how do we maximize the potential of the people that we work with? And so that stability in that and how we engage with each other to maximize our own potential and the potential of all those that we engage with. So I think is that core to that leadership, because that's what's going to inspire people to innovate, inspire people to engage in these challenging times then too.
Absolutely. We always say that there's really no such thing. Organizational change is just a concept. Organizations only change when individuals change. It's about how do we kind of bring out the best, untap the potential, as you mentioned, of the individuals of their organization. Then we create organizational change. Just so our listeners, in case they might be interested, do you happen to remember the title of the book? They might want to jot that down.
It's a Gallup book called "It's the Manager," okay. and so that's really what that book focuses on. It kind of really breaks a lot of things down from past tense to present tense, about really talking through the perspective too, that this is, a lot of times we used to look at, we have our job, we have our personal life, but I mean, really it's our life. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about today too, Lee, is that there's no real, it's just life. I mean, if we, our peace at home and our peace at work are so integrated together that it's life. And so, and how as leaders, the importance of engaging in each other's lives to drive and maximize that potential of each other is really what's key to driving an organization.
Right. So on that note, the concept of work-life balance over the years has evolved into work-life integration, which has ultimately just evolved into just what you said. It's just life, right?
It's life, yeah.
One thing. So I love that.
Yeah.
So on focusing on leaders a little bit, Dale, how do you see kind of the key responsibilities of leaders kind of evolving as we go into this kind of a post-pandemic world? What are your perspectives on that?
I think it kind of really, the story that we've kind of talked through the last 3 weeks, I think it's just a continuation of that. And so, I mean, I think stability is key to that. And then engagement is key to that. And then, transparency, communication kind of all aligns with that too. But as part of that, it part like what we talked about last week is how do we connect with our teams? When we have that foundational connectivity with our teams, it makes the engagement, when we're dealing with these difficult situations or trying to figure out what is the path from here, and having true strategic discussions a lot easier, because I mean that's a lot of the things we're all going to be dealing with now. Is we're going to be having strategic discussions on, okay, as a company, where are we today? Where do we need to get to? What are the pitfalls, the hurdles, the difficulties in getting there? And that we can have an open, honest conversation and work through those together.
Well, I made a few notes on that. You hit them all. So let me just, so we were very much aligned on that. So I call kind of this post-pandemic world's going to force leaders to kind of elevate the game, I call the 3 C's: communication, connectivity, and creativity, right? So we need to kind of elevate our communication game because more people remote. We have to figure out ways to stay connected with them if they're not in our workspace, and connected not just with them, but connect them to the purpose of the organization, connect them to the purpose of their work. And that's going to force us to be a little more creative about how we go about doing that, right? I also, we do a lot of work around parenting as leaders and leaders as parents. I believe the role as a parent is very similar to the role as a leader, just with a different group underneath them. And I think in some ways the leader is going to be more like a parent. And I don't say that in a punitive way. I just say they're going to have to look out for the total well-being of their people more than just, are they getting their work done? I think there's something to be said there. I'm raining on our parade. We'll jump into that a little bit.
No, I think that's awesome, because actually that book that I was talking about, one of the main components actually talks about in there is my well-being. What is somebody's well-being? Because what is somebody's well-being is going to align to what with their success and willingness. There's just a comfort in diving in from a work perspective then too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing is too, just creating this sense of identity. Now, we may have more people working remotely and stuff. How do I make sure my team not only feels connected, but it feels like, okay, do I have the rituals to make them feel connected? If you've ever been in a sorority or a fraternity in college, rituals play a big part of making people feel like they're part of something special that other people aren't part of. And so how do I make my team feel special, have this identity and a sense of purpose when we're maybe just, here on Zoom, and we're not really as physically connected. And I don't want to underestimate the power of being in the similar proximity. There's a lot to be said. We are going to be forced to be more creative to kind of create that team identity when we're maybe potentially more dispersed.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that a little bit last time: physical connectivity versus emotional connectivity, and and even bringing that back together more. And I think there's going to be a lot of challenges in that, because yes, we're going to be coming back into a new physical environment when we come back to the office, and how that looks on rotate, densification in offices is going to be different. So you could have certain people in the office some days, some people out remote some days, and it's just. And how to maintain that? How do you maintain, maybe do you have your core teams that are on Mondays and Wednesdays, and other core teams on Tuesday and Thursdays? And how do you, I think there's going to have to be a lot of strategic planning and discussion around that to just drive home just what you talked about.
For sure. So let's go ahead and jump into that topic about kind of well-being. As I mentioned, talking about the leaders of really a parent, viewing their role as the parent, again, not in a punitive way, but in taking a holistic view of the employee. What do you see the future role of the leader being as it relates to kind of the well-being of his or her employees?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about emotional intelligence, and so overarching that, one of the other core concepts I've been reading a lot about is the concept of psychological safety, which is more organizational, emotional intelligence. And I think where as a leader, plays a key role in that is the ability to be open and honest, and be accepting. So be accepting to where it's about being available to hear what your employees are saying. So it's not necessarily, I think a lot of times, it's not necessarily, we don't have to agree with what somebody may think that they need at this point in time, but we have to be open to listen. And so being there to open and listen so that we can just engage in the conversation. I think that's, to me, that's what a lot of people are going to need, because whatever those emotional needs, those needs were before, a lot of those are just going to be heightened and escalated, and there may be more of them. And so, if we can't have an open, honest conversation about it and work through that, that's going to be detrimental to our relationship. And so it's the same, like we talk about, if you're dealing with your kids, you want your kids to be open and honest with you on what they need, so that we can lot of times we may not agree with our kids.
I understand.
But we want to have the conversation. I think that's the point. We want to have the conversation.
Sure. The home and the work should both be
Yes.
safe places.
Yes.
And so we've developed a model years ago that's been translated, used across the world, called the Passion Performance Engagement Model, that is based on 6 human needs. And I'm going to get back and tie right back into your point. It's going to seem like I'm going down a rabbit trail, but I'm not. There are 3 intellectual needs we all have as humans, regardless of race, gender, generation, industry we're in, culture. And there are 3 intellectual needs and 3 emotional needs. So the 3 intellectual needs are the need for achievement, autonomy, and mastery. When we meet those needs, we engage people's minds, intellectual engagement. And there are 3 emotional needs, the needs for purpose, intimacy, and appreciation. When we meet those 3 emotional needs, we engage their heart and we get emotional engagement. So together, we call it passion performance. You get performance from the intellectual side, passion from the emotional side. And the big payoff for the leader is really getting discretionary effort, right? Getting your people to give their very best of their mind and their heart for the benefit of the team. The key for engaging leaders in order to be able to identify those needs is to be able to look past the employee, past the employee to the person behind the employee. And so to your point earlier, I'll circle back now, is that in order to really listen and engage with people, you have to be willing in today's day and age to be saying, listen, that's just not my analyst. That's just not my assistant. That's not my coordinator, right? That's the person that has a family at home, that's juggling 3 kids, that just had a father that had chemo. I mean, really understanding who it is. So I think that's clearly a trend that's been happening over the past 5 or 10 years. And as the millennials have become more dominant in the workforce and looking for more kind of authentic, real relationships in the workforce, that's the kind of trend that's been occurring, but has really kind of been exacerbated now with this pandemic. And I think if a leader is not willing to be a little bit vulnerable and also a little bit, be comfortable with him or herself and the softer side of leadership, right? The emotional side, I don't think you're going to have the most engaged team you can have. I think that it used to kind of be a nice to have where, leaders that could create this nice, safe place and really be emotionally intelligent and have psychological safety, those really set themselves apart. I think in the future, that's going to be kind of this entrance into the game, right?
Yeah.
You're able to do that.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've been really thinking a lot lately because we use these big terms like psychological safety, emotional intelligence, and so I think a lot of times it's easy to get lost in the, no offense, Lee, the psychology.
No, I'm with you.
And so I was kind of like trying to really like, how do we simplify that?
Yeah.
And so, kind of like what I've been thinking about recently is like, to me, what people really want to know is like, do you trust me?
That's it.
The answer may be no. I mean, but let's have the conversation though.
That's foundational. Yep.
Yeah. And then, are you willing to hear me?
Yeah.
And so even thinking through that in the terms of what we're talking about, psychological safety, emotional intelligence, is just saying I'm willing to hear you is not really, it's like, how do we show that? So, we've all been in conversations all the time with our spouses, with our kids, with people at work. We're listening, but we're not hearing. And I mean, yeah, I've failed at that plenty of times, so I'll put my hand up.
Well, and the same thing happens. We'll challenge our clients, say, listen, how many times do you even look at someone, look at your employee, but not really see them? Because you're looking at the employee, not the person, right? So, And by the way, I take no offense. I know Ph.D. stands for piled high and deep. I just recently started putting it by my name because I didn't want people to know I was a Ph.D., but I'm simple-minded for that. Because to me, no matter how complex the issue is, we have to boil it down so that it's actionable for leaders that are living in this information-rich, time-poor world. There's lots of stuff going on. Every leader feels like they're just on this treadmill. And so how do we provide them a tool or an approach that's no more than 3 steps that they can say, okay, I can execute to that? Because the most intricate plan and strategy and model, if it can't be executed, is just something that looks nice on a wall. So so keeping things kind of just boiled down and real is really important for us.
Yeah, because I think it's so, the other thing is like, be interested to hear your thoughts on this then too, Lee, is because like we've talked a lot about, you hear a lot about controlling what you can control.
Yeah.
And, and so I think as leaders, it's where we have to be careful at times is really understanding the one thing we can't control people.
Yeah.
So, so when we talk about some of this, it's like control what you control, but we can't control people. So that's where I think understanding that is so important, to then understanding how we connect with people to drive and maximize their success then too.
I love the word flourish, where our firm's all about helping people flourish. And because the definition of it is that kind of something that has rigorous growth and development, particularly as a result of very favorable environments.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're trying to do. Is like, we can't control our people, but we can create the right environment, a safe place, a motivating place, a place where there's open communication and challenge and accountability, by the way. This isn't all just the soft stuff, right? But create the right environment where people can kind of elevate to their potential. And that's really, and that to me, that's about enabling people to flourish. And I believe if our people flourish, the organization flourishes. So it's kind of like two levels there, individual and organizational. But all we can do is create the kind of environment to help people succeed. And if they're not willing to step up and move toward their best potential in that environment, then we have tough discussions around that. That's okay. But I think you're right on. Leadership's not about controlling and that kind of thing. And particularly in this day and age, and I'm not sure that's been any different in the past, the most inspiring leaders just create environments that make you want to step into that. I mean, that's the difference between like compliance and commitment, right? A typical manager is going to make you want to comply, but a great leader is going to make me feel a sense of commitment, like I want to deliver for that. Right? So that's and again, that may have been the exception in the past, and I think this pandemic is just accelerating that trend to say, listen, to be successful as a leader in the future, the entrance stakes you're going to have to be inspiring and have to know how to create kind of a great environment where people want to kind of thrive, right?
Lee,
I love the word flourish. It kind of reminds me of like, from a gardening perspective, vines and plants. And so what do vines, the plants that flourish, that are really strong, they have a deep root structure. Yeah. Deep root structure. And so some of the strongest plants, they may take a while to really flourish and grow, but they've developed such a deep root structure. When they do take off, they just take off so fast and so strong.
Lee, this is Katie. Yes, a few minutes ago, you talked through quickly some really rich information. So would love to have you repeat it for us. Go through your emotional needs again.
Oh, sure. So let me just set the full context real quickly. There are 6 basic human needs that everyone in the workplace has, regardless of where you are or what you look like. It doesn't matter. So the 3 intellectual needs are the needs for achievement, autonomy, and mastery. And then the 3 emotional needs are the needs for purpose, intimacy, which is kind of like affiliation or connectedness. So purpose, intimacy, and appreciation. And Katie, as a follow-up, I'll send just a short white paper kind of on that model. And that way people could kind of have that so they don't have to feel like they take copious notes here, okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Lee.
No worries. Dale, we often use this analogy of the Indian thorny bamboo seed. It's a particular type of bamboo seed in Asia that once planted takes like 2 years to break down to the right environmental conditions and sunlight and rain, and nothing happens for 2 years. But once it breaks ground, it could grow up to 100 feet in less than 2 weeks, right? And so, that was in the book okay, that's probably
No, it's actually it's in another book. There's a book.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah.
A book called Chop Wood, Carry Water.
Okay,
Which has all these little.
So
it has that one in there too.
Yeah, it's a great illustration, because sometimes as a leader, we feel like we're doing all the right stuff. I'm reading the right books. I'm getting the right coaching. We may not see the results right away, but we have to feel confident that by doing the right stuff, we're helping create a strong root structure, not just for our own leadership, but in our own people. They're creating the right values, the right character. We always say leadership's an inside job, right? It starts for your personal leadership first. So you're pouring into your people, and then you might not see the results, no different than a parent, right? Parenting, leadership parenting, that you may not see the results for years later, hopefully a little sooner, but you have to have the confidence to know that I'm doing the right stuff. I'm not going to get caught up in the flavor of the day. I keep investing in my people, investing in the relationship, doing the right things to create a foundation of trust, as you alluded to. trust, 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 right? If your trust is gone, right, you could write anything off, right? And you know that if you've lost trust in an employee, it's kind of hard to get that back, or vice versa, or trust in any relationship. So I think I want to encourage the people listening that if you feel like you're doing the right stuff and not getting the results, it's always great to question, and look. But I'd also say if you're confident that you're doing the right things, just trust that you're building that root structure that's going to come up at some point. So be patient with that.
Yep.
So Dale, do you want to talk any more about just kind of the psychological safety or just the emotional intelligence? I know that's kind of a hot thing for you and really critical in not only the workforce today, but moving forward. Anything else you might want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I speak to it here at Weaver from a culture perspective is like really what is Weaver's culture? So you can apply this to I believe to any company. What is your company's culture? Right. Like a lot of people try to define culture by different things, but when I kind of break it down, to me, I have this kind of visualization of it, in that you have this culture balloon, and every single person here at Weaver or your company is connected to this culture balloon. Mm-hmm. So, and then each individual person is also connected to each other. So we have a choice each day to either inflate or deflate this cultural balloon. And so really layer back and look at it. What is culture? Culture is our individual character. And so when we look at that and what our individual character is, what underlines that is our emotional intelligence. And and what do we bring to work each day, and how do we engage with each other within our emotional intelligence to continue to grow and drive the culture of our organizations. And so kind of working through this, I mean, I've learned a lot about myself too, just learned a lot about what my strengths and even some of my weaknesses were within emotional intelligence, and what does it mean to, for introspection, accountability, conflict management, and just some of the different things, mindfulness. The story I kind of tell about myself is a lot of times is, I can get very tunnel visioned. So, I could be in the office, have to walk to the other side of the office to go talk to somebody, and you walk past 10 different people. And because you've got your mindset on who you have to go talk to, and you just ignore everybody that you walk past. Nothing intentional, but, but being more mindful of those types of things and building the emotional intelligence of that to say, hey, that is something that I've had a tendency to be one of my weaknesses. Right. So being mindful of it allowed me to be more intentional when I engage with my team then in those types of situations then too.
Right. Very nice. Very nice. As we coach executives, Dale, we'll talk to them just what you're saying. We're saying, listen, not everyone has a full set of gifts. We all have gifts. We all have some blind spots, some things we need to work on. But being aware of that, having that emotional intelligence to be able to say, you know what, I'm not really great about appreciating my team. Maybe that's one of the 3 emotional needs, right, that I'm working on.
Yep.
And so we'll say, listen, that's okay. Half the battle is acknowledging it, right? The awareness.
Yes. 100%.
How do we just get creative and figure out, okay, so we'll have clients say, listen, every Friday morning, I'll have a recurring appointment on their Outlook calendar that says, who did you acknowledge this week? Or who did you appreciate this week? And so if that pops up and they're like, oops, gee, I didn't get to anybody this week, it's just a reminder to keep it top of mind. Not everyone's just naturally going to be looking for those things. Or they can ask their staff to say, hey, each staff meeting every week, everyone bring in one person on your team that's done a great job, and let me know what they did so I could either write them a note or send them a voicemail or a text or something. So those are ways you can kind of to be creative and just say, hey, it's not my natural gift or my natural bent, but I'm aware of it. So now I can create some strategies to kind of help buttress that as a skill. So, but
I agree 100%.
It all starts with awareness, right?
It all starts with awareness. And like some people might think, well, is that being disingenuous because it's not natural? No, it's not, because we all have blind spots, and that's the humanity in us. And so it doesn't mean anybody lacks appreciation to somebody or somebody, it's just that building that awareness so that, makes us more thoughtful through that process then too.
And speaking of blind spots, we all have them, as you mentioned, and the best way to eliminate them is for people to be comfortable and feeling psychologically safe to say, hey, Lee, I know you didn't mean it, but I know you think you're a great listener, but you just didn't shut up in that last meeting. right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yes.
no, thank you very much. Now I can't bite their head off because that's not psychologically safe, right? So we have to, again, back to trust. People have to trust to say, Lee, if I'm going to say something tough to Lee, he's going to take it in the right spirit, right? But if we don't have that, people are not going to say anything to me. So I'm going to start looking like an idiot meeting after meeting after meeting. And we've all been in situations where we've seen someone that has a big blind spot, the guy with a huge ego or is arrogant or whatever. And I don't know about you, but I get like a visceral reaction, like, oh my gosh, does he realize he's coming off like that? Like, it's a horrible feeling, like it just turns your stomach. And so I just have people say, I always have my clients say, think of a time when you saw that in somebody else. You sure never want anyone thinking that way when you're up in the front of the room. So we have to create that environment where, again, people are comfortable coming to us. And we've got to work on ourselves and say, listen, I don't have enough of an ego. Someone's willing to tell me something and be bold enough to tell me. I've got to take that. I can choose to agree with it or disagree with it. That's fine. But I've got to take that in, be willing to kind of have enough leadership courage to look at myself and say, you know what, I didn't intend that, but he's son of a gun, he's right. I came off like a little bit of a jerk, and be willing to take that. And if we think that we're never past that stage, I've always told people, like, if you think as a leader you've arrived, you're dead in the water, right? Because no one's ever finished learning. And you're also setting a really crummy, frankly, example for your team to think, oh, once I get to Lee's level or Dale's level, right, then I can kind of cruise, right? I don't need to listen to people. I can just kind of do my own thing. And so I think that's all, again, we're all right now, last half hour almost, talking about personal leadership, right? Your own character, your own awareness, working on yourself, your own development. And to me, that's what makes great leaders. And I think in the past, we've kind of known that, but all of the press, all the articles, all the workshops were around leadership skills, how to cast a great vision, how to select people well, how to develop them, how to do this and that, how to build a team. All those are critical, but back to the foundational thing. If it's not built on a foundation of good, strong character and self-leadership, we could have all these great skills out here, but they're really kind of on a slippery foundation. The reverse also holds true, in my opinion, in my experience, Dale, is that if we have a really solid foundation here,
Yep.
and the intent is right, our skill level may be like so-so, but we could still soar because people see that it's coming from the right place.
Yeah. I speak, when I talk to psychological safety, I say psychological safety is like the foundation of our building.
Mm-hmm.
Every building is going to be shaken by an earthquake at some point in time.
That's right.
And so the strength of that foundation's going to be the determination of how much damage that building takes. And so, because the building's going to take damage. I mean, that's really what I mean. And so something like the pandemic, I mean, every company's building is being rocked right now, and psychological safety is is part of that foundation of how we work through this together as a team.
That's right. And that foundation.
Dale, you both talked about trust quite a bit. Can you take a minute and tell us how you decide and how to act when you feel like an employee has lost your trust or vice versa? What do you recommend?
That's a really easy question, so I'm going to let Dale handle it. No, I'm just joking. That's tricky. So, but Dale, I'll defer to you, and I'll chime in.
I mean, I think that's where psychological safety comes into play, is that we have to be willing to be open and honest in those conversations. So if we're not willing to have that discussion in discussing that with the employee, then the trust breaks down even further organizationally. So even though an employee, so that's really the impact of not having those discussions with somebody who's broken your trust. Employees that you trust may then question, well, if they still trust that person, do they really still trust me? And so that's where the organizational and psychological safety really, for me, is key to that element.
Yeah. And great, Dylan. I'll just echo that and just remind people that are watching that we lead in a fishbowl, right? People are watching every move. So if we're not addressing certain situations or we're allowing things, people are looking at that going, okay, how is he managing that? Why is he not addressing that issue? And people will generally be forgiving. They're generally frustrated with the other party first, like the other employee that you might not be managing. But after a couple of times, that frustration gets shifted right back up to the leader and starts going, wait a minute, why is he or she not dealing with that? Or why is he or she allowing that kind of behavior or being permissive of this? So we really have to be on our game and know that, like, when we're leading, everything matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are watching every little thing, and that's, for better or for worse. You could complain about it all day long, but that's how it is. And the mature leader understands that and realizes that I just can't kind of sweep stuff under the rug, right? I think Stephen Covey had a great quote years ago that said, unexpressed emotions don't go away. They just rear their heads in uglier ways, right? And it's the same performance issues and all that. Unaddressed performance issues or relational issues don't go away. They're just going to rear their heads in uglier ways. So we can't sweep them under the rug. We have to address them. And the easiest way to address them is if we work and poured energy into that foundation of trust, and then it makes it easier to bring them up. If we don't have that, it gets a little bit sticky. So it's really a pay me now or pay me later leadership proposition. Is that today, if you haven't been doing it, start developing, being open with people, talking to them, having the right conversations. Again, everything we're talking about here applies to the family setting, right? No different than the work setting. It's really the same dynamic. But
Yeah.
We have another really good question, Dale and Lee. And I know we just have a couple minutes left. I want to make sure we fit this in.
Sure.
One of the challenges, and I'm sure there are many businesses dealing with this, Rachel, thank you for this question, balancing communication and engagement among different groups of people. So those people that are working remotely and perhaps feeling safer, have been feeling safer in that environment, versus those that are essential workers that have to go every single day and have been exposing themselves physically. What are your thoughts on dealing with that from a leadership and communication perspective?
Well, I'll just chime in real quickly and hear from Dale. I think the communication needs to be the same. The people that are disconnected from us working from home, we need to make them feel connected. And the people there putting their lives at risk, we need to make sure we appreciate them and they know every day the steps we're taking to keep them safe and the things we need them to do to remain safe and productive, right? So I think on the communication, it's different communication, but I don't think it's like a different standard for each one. And I think there's also an appreciation that each party has to have for the other about the role that they're playing to support the business, even from home, and making those sacrifices, but certainly keeping the business running in the plants and the manufacturing facilities on the work front too. So this is back to kind of mutual respect, understanding roles, and having appreciation for our team members. Dale, something to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we as a CPA firm, we probably don't deal with that as much yet. Until we're going to have to start having certain teams go to client offices as clients open up, and so people going more to the office versus going to remote spots. So yes, I mean, from a communication perspective, it is the same but different then too, and maintaining the same level of safety protocols that we expect here at Weaver as we would if we go to the client's office, so that the understanding from our team is, we're looking at everything from a holistic perspective, the way that we evaluate what the needs of our teams are then too.
So if you were to advise someone who perhaps has not had this optimal leadership environment and culture within their organization, if you were to advise them on most appropriate next steps for coming back to the office after everything that's happened, and I want to engage a more positive culture and a more positive leadership style, where would you start?
And so, Katie, is this the leader asking this question, or is this an employee trying to influence upward? Just to be clear.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. So
I can't see who it is.
I would say if you're the employee, I would say be your own center of excellence. So encourage upward and make sure that that you're bringing some of these learnings and insights to your leader to help him or her. If you're the leader, I mean, use this as a new day. And this is back to being vulnerable. Hey guys, I know this is a new world now, and it opened my eyes, and I had some time to reflect, and I'm going to do my best to do a few things differently or better. And I want your help in keeping me accountable to do that. If you can say that, then you're ready to kind of create some real sustained change over time. Dale, something to add to that?
I think I lost a little bit of that because
Yeah,
my
yeah.
it went unstable.
Well, when you froze, I thought you fell asleep. Your head was, I was like, oh, he just froze. That's all.
Actually, I thought both of you were frozen. So I was talking and you were all talking. So now I agree. I mean, just let down your guard.
Yeah.
You just, I mean, I think that's, as a leader, we have to be willing to let down our guard. And I think it's not, I mean, it's taken me a long time to get comfortable. Honestly, it's taken me a long time to get comfortable on that. So it's not easy, but the more that we let down our guard, the more open and honest our teams are going to be willing to be with us too.
Right. Leadership vulnerability is the ultimate leadership courage, right? And that's the real test there. Cool. Katie, any other questions before we wrap up?
One, and that is, if you were to summarize your final thoughts on, after everything that people have been through in this remote working environment, and some bright spots that people can take back to their offices with them, what are those key takeaways?
Dale, you want to start off?
I would say emotional connectivity. I think just the emotional connectivity that I feel like has grown even exponentially in this remote environment. Just bring that back to the office. Bring back that willingness to pull back that curtain. We've pulled back that curtain from a societal perspective and a business perspective through video chatting. You can just continue that conversation.
Yeah. And the one I would add to that, the one takeaway would be the fact that we're probably all more resilient than we think we are. And so this has been thrown everybody for a loop, and most people are going to come out stronger with maybe new skill sets, new perspectives, more opportunities to innovate. So I just think appreciating the power of our human resilience through anything is a great kind of sense of confidence to take with you, regardless of what happens. Because the fact is, no trend goes on forever. The world and economies go like this, so there'll be another one of these. So just bringing that confidence forward is great with that sense of resilience.
Well, thank you both very much. We're going to wrap up here, and I want to thank all of you that participated today, asking questions, certainly sharing your thoughts. We did get several questions about some of the recorded webinars that we have already done. So we will make sure that we include those in our follow-up to this webinar, as well as the materials that Lee spoke about, the white paper, and then he has another PDF that we will be sure to include in today's follow-up. I want to remind you that Weaver has a Resilience and Recovery Resource Center on Weaver.com. All of these webinars and many, many other resources, including blogs and recorded webinars on a variety of topics, podcasts, etc., are all housed in that Resilience and Recovery Resource Center. We're also coming out with more and more industry-specific insights. We've been adding new content almost every day, and we certainly want to hear from you on anything that you'd like for us to cover. So let us know, check it out, and we'll get you that follow-up email. We have a quick two question survey, so feel free to answer that as well. Would love to know your feedback. We've got 2 upcoming webinars we want to make you aware of today. One is tomorrow, Friday the 15th at 10 a.m. It's about returning to the workplace and what businesses need to know. So we're hosting that again tomorrow from 10 to 11 a.m. If that is of interest, you can find a link to that on our LinkedIn page. That's probably the easiest place to find it, and you can register. Also, Lee Colan and our CEO and managing partner, John Mackle, are going to present a webinar like this one today, discussion focused, and it'll be on resilient leadership. So that is still in the process of being scheduled. Watch for more information on that, and we hope you can join us. Thank you again for being here. Thanks for participating. Have a great day.
Thanks, Lee. This has been awesome.
Good seeing you.
Yep, good seeing you.